Good afternoon and welcome to Slay Tuned. I'm sorry I've been away for a couple of days, but unfortunately I've been really sick. I've been suffering from migraines so bad I haven't been able to film or edit anything. But I'm back now and I'm desperate to do a video, and today's video is about Ashley Howley. Keeping in theme to murderers who are named after death, Ashley Howley was a victim who visited a psychic to show where she was buried. Ashley Howley was a 20-year-old woman who lived in Columbus, Ohio. Not much is said about her because, incredulously, considering this is quite an interesting story, this hasn't been reported much. There wasn't that many newspapers I could find, and there were next to no YouTube videos I could find. I find it insane that some murders have so much traction and others, just as interesting or disturbing, can have little to none. One of the reasons why I worry why this may not have had any traction is she was a stripper, which is an absolute fine and perfectly good profession to have. But there does seem to be an air of villainization in the media when someone is a sex worker of any kind. A little more blame is added to the victim and a little less empathy is removed from the situation, I find sometimes. I'm not saying that's fact in why it hasn't been reported, I'm just worried it is the reason. In June 16th, 2004, Ashley Howley went missing. According to the newspaper I read, her mother didn't report her as a missing person until a month after. I can't find whether they lived together, whether they didn't live together, whether they had an estranged relationship. It may have been perfectly normal that they checked in once a month and she never heard from her and now she's worried, or she had to wait that long. Usually it's not, usually it's 24 hours, but I'm not sure why it was a month. One of their biggest suspects was Robert P. McMichael II. He was the 22-year-old ex-boyfriend of Ashley Howley. They had recently broken up before she went missing, and on the same day they went missing, she had filed a report against him claiming that he had assaulted her. But the police couldn't find anything. Even dogs couldn't find a scent of where her body was. And this turned into a pretty cold case pretty quickly, until a year and a half later, Christy Robinette, a psychic medium, said that the spirit of Ashley Howley visited her to tell her where she was buried. I have a lot of feelings about Christy, which I won't say until the end, but I will say now there are two sources from multiple different places that say that Ashley Howley dragged Christy out of bed to talk to her, and Ashley Howley visited Christy in the shower. And from what I can find, both origins of those sources are both from Christy. Christy said she was crying and that she only wanted to be loved. She claimed she had been murdered and that she wanted the world to know that it was her ex-boyfriend. Christy even commented that she seemed pretty vengeful. Christy Robinette had grown up in a strict Christian household and had actually quoted also saying, "I could tell she was a spirit and she had not crossed over and she hadn't passed over to heaven, or what we call heaven." She actually had no idea who this girl was and started Googling victims with blonde hair, other details that Ashley had apparently given her, and as soon as she saw Ashley Howley's face online, she instantly knew it was the ghost who had visited her. She got in touch with the police and described Ashley Howley's clothes, and although sometimes the police do work with mediums, I don't think they took it any further than this. Christy Robinette claims that Ashley Howley visited her multiple times over the next years or so, giving her images of light-coloured pine cones, saying that's where she was buried. It got to the point that Christy actually took a trip to Columbus with a friend of hers, and when they got there to a park where it was full of pine, a ranger asked her why she was there. She explained that she was looking for the murder spot and that she was told there needs to be light-coloured pine. The ranger said, "There are none here, but I know where there are." She apparently was taken to a certain spot and Christy went, "This is it. This is where she is." But because she wasn't with the police and it was on private property, no one would dig anything. Nothing happened for I think 2 years, and then in 2008 they found Ashley Howley. The police had dug up the body and it was in pretty much where Christy had said it was. In multiple sources, it says McMichael did not confess to the murder until after the body was found. But once again, in one article I did find, and it was a newspaper article, it's talking about how the body is found and McMichael is the only suspect. He was the only suspect because once again, She went missing the day she put an assault charge against him. It was an ex-boyfriend, which usually adds some point of suspicion on, but it was also the location was very close to his father's home. At this time, when her body was found in 2008, McMichael was already in jail after being charged for the murder of his mum and stepfather. So I honestly don't know what happened there. I don't know whether he did give the location and then they found it, or they found it and then he confessed. But either way, he was charged, he pled guilty, and he's in prison for 3 murders right now. On face value, a medium is visited by a spirit. She sees where she's murdered. She finds the spot. The police pretty much confirm that years later that is the spot. It kind of is interesting. You go, ooh, even people who don't believe in ghosts love a good ghost story. And this is a good ghost story in that sense. I am spiritual, but I'm a skeptical spiritualist when it comes to anyone who makes a profession from communicating with ghosts in any way. Although the credibility of Christy is amplified by 1,000 because she finds the body, every single article I find of Christy, about Christy or about this situation, is a plug. It's plugging how the type of medium she is. It's plugging something she's doing with her career. It's plugging something about her profession as a medium, not about Ashley Howley, the victim who is murdered. I also find the credibility of Christy confusing, where she herself can recount 2 different stories on how Ashley visited her. I'm going to have to scour the articles I read as well, because I'm sure I read all these things that Ashley apparently said to Christy, like, I just want to be loved, I just want my family to find closure, I was murdered, my boyfriend did it. And then I'm sure I read in one article, she said something like, all she said was, I just want to be loved. So how can she recount, once again, 2 different conversations? And it's not for me to question how the spirit world works, but I do find it interesting that this medium can have words delivered to her, but not the vital information, just the visual spot. But then I could also say, playing a devil's advocate to myself, maybe Ashley didn't know the place. Maybe that's why she had to just show her through images. I just find it suspicious that a medium will plug their profession non-stop when talking about a case. I think it's in bad taste. I also find it suspicious that her own account is completely different from her own mouth. Although, once again, devil's advocate, we can argue that the written interviews could be twisted by the writer. The only time I've heard her speak was when she said she was visited in the shower. But it is a pretty big twist for a writer to do. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad to be back, and if you're glad I'm back, please like and comment, because it helps a new growing channel. And don't forget to subscribe, because I'm not going anywhere. If I am, it's for a couple of days at the most. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to slay tuned.